my name is Vladimir Mrša. I'm an editor-in-chief of a journal that is called Food Technology and Biotechnology, which basically defines the topic of the journal. And we are, I'm proud to say, one of the best science journals in Croatia, and we try to keep it this way.
Being a journal editor is quite a challenge. What are the challenges you face at the moment?
The challenges are many, actually, and we are living in a world that changes constantly, and the changes are very quick. So fast adaptation to changes in the world is one of the challenges of a scientific journal, I think. The other one is, of course, financing. Publishing papers costs money, and now we are facing the different models of financing scientific journals. A model where institutions and libraries have been paying for publishing, to authors paying for publishing and now some in Diamond Access journals where somebody else would pay for exchange of research data. Is something that is a challenge, because on one hand, a scientific journal and every journal, in fact, requires some stability, and on the other hand, all these changes are in contrast to this stability that we need.
Food technology changes very rapidly, and there are huge changes in the way we think of food, the trends in food. I mean, that must be an enormous challenge to a journal like yours.
The changes in technology are something that we have to reflect in our papers. So it is not only the quality of the paper itself, but also in what kind of message the paper will send to the readers is also something that is very important. And also, on the other hand, we have the technology in the publishing process, and that transforms the journal itself. And this is somehow intervened, because all these processes on the way we publish scientific information today.
One of the challenges in many medical journals is the pressure from industry. I guess in the food industry, there is enormous pressure as well.
Yes. Well, this is a part of perhaps a little broader issue, which again includes the financing, because we have now research that is primarily financed by public sources. But on the other hand, especially in our fields, we also have research that is published by private sources. And we have more and more some intermediate situation where a part of the research is paid for by taxpayers, and the other part by private companies. Now the whole scientific area now moves towards the open science, and we would like to have more open situation and open access to research data. But on the other hand, research is getting more and more expensive, and especially in the field of medical research and biotechnology, where you need more and more money to get competitive results. And it becomes more and more clear that public sources are not going to be sufficient for the research, and so the research institutions are looking for additional sources of money among the private investors. And now this opens the question again, or sheds a different light to the question of open science, because of course if private money is involved in the research, the investor will not be very happy with open access to the data. Now this is something that we have to have a balance, and we have to find the way of coping with this situation that is more and more hybrid situation.
One of the concerns we have in medical journals is misconduct. Is scientific misconduct a problem with the food technology industry influence?
It can be, yes. It can be. I think misconduct in science is not a matter of a particular field of science. It is more one of the consequences of the direction science in general is heading towards. And this is scientists are faced with constant evaluation, and this evaluation using metrics as the major factor, as the major parameter, and this puts the scientist, and especially a young scientist, into a position that his job may eventually be jeopardized if he doesn't have, or she doesn't have, a sufficient number of papers in journals with high impact factors, and his age index is going to be measured. And in such a situation, there is, I think it's not surprising that we have also more and more cases of misconduct, and people who are simply put in the situation that their life existence depends on the metrics of the journal. So
the other big change in publishing is the increase in the number of preprints, the potential to use repositories, different ways of publishing. Is this something you're interested in, or things are happening, or things are changing?
We are definitely interested in it, because we cannot avoid it. It's the future. I mean, if you ask me how a science magazine, a science journal will look like in 10 years, I don't know. But the only thing I do know is that it will not look like the one today. Everything is going to be different. The whole publishing system is there for several reasons. It fulfills several requirements. One is it is a part of science. Communication is a part of science. I often try to compare scientific process with a cake. You have layers. You have a layer of research, creating or gathering data, and then you have a layer of communication, because you have to communicate these data, and you get the output of from others to these data that you have communicated, and then your next layer of research will depend on it, and the next communication will depend on the next research. So you have this kind of a layered situation. But it is not only the communication itself. It is also the evaluation process that goes through the journals and through your data that you try to communicate with the environment. So we need to have some sort of evaluation, and the evaluation will always go through the researcher's output, and this is in the papers. It's just that perhaps today it is perhaps oversimplified by using pure metric numbers.
You spoke there about communication, and of course you have another group who are very interested in what you do. They're the consumers and the media. How do you see the interaction between journals and the population in general?
It is more and more difficult, because maybe well, I don't know, maybe if you asked me this question 40 years ago when I was a student, I would have said that perhaps at least media, people from the media could read research papers and get an idea of what we are doing, and then transfer it, put it into a way that a public will understand and accept. Today, it's more and more difficult, because research communication, scientific communication, is getting more and more focused to narrower topics. And so we need a completely, in my opinion, we need a completely new set of vehicles, so to say, to direct our research data, or first to transform our research data into something that public can understand, and then to communicate with the broader public. So the other thing is, as I mentioned, the evaluation. And so this is something that is very, very important, because scientists have lost at least a part of their credibility in the last years, and we need to, and we need this credibility, because otherwise everything that we do has no sense. We have to be trusted, and the data that we publish have to be trusted, and this has always been so previously in the past. And whenever we wanted to argument how something is, you go to the scientific data and you look at the scientific data and you say what the scientists have said about it. Now in the nearer past, in the last maybe decade or two, this has been lost to some extent, and this is very dangerous, because if you lose the trust in science, then the whole society will people have to trust somebody. If they don't trust scientists, it may be a very dangerous problem.
Thank you for this wonderful conversation about what's happening in publishing, what's happening in your particular industry. But what a fantastic note to finish on, the whole issue of scientific trust. Thank you very much indeed.